That I've always been drawn to places that make your heart race and your skin crawl. There's something about abandoned halls, old mansions, and silent corridors that whispers stories you're not supposed to hear. Tonight, I decided to step into the unknown, to explore the most haunted places in America. Each location has its own dark past, filled with spirits that refuse to leave, mysteries that still linger, and moments that make you question reality. I can feel the chills just thinking about them, and I promise, what you're about to see isn't fiction. These are real places, with real hauntings, waiting for anyone brave enough to enter. If you love exploring real haunted places with me, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and join the adventure. 1. Kings Park Psychiatric Center, Kings Park, New York, Haunted Hospital. I first saw the outline of Kings Park Psychiatric Center long before I stepped inside it. The place rises out of the trees like something that was never meant to be part of this world. I remember standing at the edge of the property for a moment, just listening. There was no wind, no birds, only a strange heavy silence that felt almost alive. It was the kind of silence that makes you question whether you should take another step forward, but for some reason, I did. The closer I got, the more real the place felt, cracked windows, empty doorways, and long corridors swallowed by darkness. I pushed open a rusted side door, and the metal groan echoed through the hall as if the building exhaled after years of holding its breath. The air inside was colder than outside, and for a second, it felt like the temperature drop wrapped around my shoulders. I kept walking, slowly, because every sound I made bounced back at me from somewhere deeper in the building. That I passed through a hallway lined with old paint peeling like dead skin from the walls. I kept imagining the thousands of people who once lived here, people who never chose this place, people whose voices probably filled these halls every day. For a few minutes, I didn't hear anything except my own footsteps, and then I heard something that made me stop. A soft tapping sound. It was distant, but real. Not an animal, not a building settling, something steady, like fingers touching metal. I followed the sound even though my body kept telling me to turn back. It led me toward one of the treatment rooms. When I stepped inside, everything felt wrong immediately. The smell, the coldness, the stillness, it felt like someone had been there a moment before me. In the corner of the room was an old metal bed frame. That's when I noticed the tapping again, but this time it came from right behind me. I spun around, but nothing was there, just the door I had walked through. My heart was beating so hard I could feel it in my ears, but I forced myself to breathe slowly. I stepped back into the hallway, telling myself it was nothing. But then I saw something that made every hair on my body rise. A shadow crossed the far end of the corridor. Not fast, not blurry, slow, like someone calmly walking past. And it wasn't shaped like mine. I don't know why, but instead of running, I walked toward where the shadow had been. When I reached the corner, the hallway was empty. Completely empty. But the coldness there was different. Heavier. Almost like someone was standing close enough to breathe beside me. I whispered, "Hello," and before the sound even faded, a sudden sharp noise, like a door slamming miles inside the building, shot through the corridors. My whole body jumped. That was the moment I knew whatever was inside Kings Park wasn't just leftover history or imagination. Something was still here. Something that didn't like being disturbed. I didn't run, but I didn't look back again. Either. I walked straight out of the building, feeling like eyes were following me the whole way. And even when I reached the outside air, warm compared to the freezing inside, I still felt that heavy presence lingering behind me, as if it had followed me right to the exit. Even now, when I think about that place, I can still hear that slow tapping in my head. And I know one thing for sure, Kings Park Psychiatric Center may be abandoned, but it is not empty. 2. Herring, Cole Hall, St. Lawrence University, Canton, New York, Haunted University. I still remember the evening I decided to visit Herring, Cole Hall. It wasn't planned at all. I was walking across the campus, and the sun was already dropping behind the buildings. The air had that quiet feeling you get right before night fully takes over. I don't know why, but something pulled me toward that old stone building. Maybe it was curiosity, or maybe something else. When I reached the door, the place looked calm, almost too calm. I pushed the wooden door slowly, and the moment it opened, this strange cold air touched my face. It felt like walking into a room that had been sealed for years. My steps echoed as I walked inside, and every echo sounded slightly different, like someone was walking a step behind me but trying not to be noticed. I kept telling myself it was nothing. Old buildings always make strange sounds. But the deeper I went, the heavier the silence became. It wasn't empty silence, it felt like a silence full of eyes. I tried to shake the feeling off and walked into the old reading hall. The light coming from the tall windows was dim, and everything looked frozen in time, the wooden tables, the high shelves, even the dust in the air. That I don't know why, but I felt like I should sit for a minute. Maybe I wanted to understand why this place felt so different. But the moment I sat, something shifted. The room suddenly felt colder, as if someone had opened a door I couldn't see. I looked around slowly, trying to stay calm. That's when I heard it, a soft whisper. Not a voice I could understand, more like someone breathing out words just a few feet away. I stood up immediately. My heartbeat felt too loud inside my chest. I took a slow step toward the shelves, thinking maybe an animal was trapped somewhere. But as I got closer, the whisper stopped. It just cut off like someone had pressed a button. I waited for a second, and that's when I heard something else, a page turning. I swear I froze right there. It was so clear, like someone was slowly reading a book behind the shelf. When I stepped closer, the sound stopped again. Everything went dead silent. I leaned forward, trying to look through the small gap between the shelves, and suddenly a shadow moved across the wall on the opposite side. Not fast. Slow. Calm. Like a person taking a gentle walk. But there was no one there. My breath got stuck in my throat. I took a step back, and the floor creaked loudly under my shoe. For a split second, I felt something, like the air beside me shifted, like someone was standing right next to me. And then a book fell behind me. It didn't slide. It didn't tilt. It fell hard, like someone had knocked it straight off the shelf. That was it for me. I didn't run, but I walked out as fast as I could without looking back. The hall felt like it was watching me leave. When I stepped outside, the warm evening air felt unreal after what I felt inside. Even now, when I think about that whisper and that shadow, I know I wasn't alone in that building. Whatever moves inside Herring Coal Hall doesn't want to be seen, but it definitely knows when someone is there. 3. The Ramble, Central Park, Manhattan, New York, Haunted Park. It was late evening when I found myself wandering toward the Ramble in Central Park. The city behind me was full of noise and lights, but the moment I stepped into the trees, everything changed. The sounds of traffic faded, replaced by an eerie quiet that made me feel like I had left Manhattan entirely. I don't know why, but my steps slowed. It felt like the forest was holding its breath, waiting for me to make the next move. The paths twisted and turned, and with every corner I rounded, the shadows seemed to move slightly. I kept telling myself it was just the wind, or maybe my imagination, but something in the air made my skin tingle. The trees here are old and dense, and their branches blocked most of the fading sunlight. I could feel a chill creeping up my spine, though the air outside was warm. My instincts screamed to turn back, yet some strange pull made me continue. As I walked deeper, I started noticing small things, an empty bench that looked freshly sat on, leaves that had been disturbed, and a faint smell of wet earth mixed with something metallic. My mind kept racing, thinking about the stories I had read, disappearances, strange sounds at night, and ghostly figures people claimed to have seen here. I wanted to dismiss them, but the park had a way of making every shadow and sound feel alive. I heard it first as a soft rustle behind me. I froze. It wasn't the wind, I could feel it close, like someone walking slowly, deliberately. My heart pounded, echoing in my ears louder than the city ever could. I forced myself to move forward, hoping to see that it was just another visitor. But when I glanced over my shoulder, no one was there. The path behind me looked empty, untouched. Then I noticed it. A figure, standing between two trees ahead. At first, I thought it was a person waiting for someone, but something about its stillness felt unnatural. It didn't move, blink, or shift. My stomach twisted as I tried to make sense of it. I took a step closer, my foot crunching on dry leaves, and the figure seemed to dissolve into the shadows. I turned quickly, ready to leave, but the silence pressed in on me. Even though I was outside, near a park entrance, I couldn't shake the feeling of being followed. A low sound, a whisper. A sigh, brushed past my ears, fleeting, almost imagined, yet unmistakably there. My legs moved faster, carrying me back to the lights of the city. Even now, thinking about the ramble sends a shiver down my spine. The park feels normal by day, full of joggers and tourists, but at dusk, when the shadows stretch long, it becomes something else. Something that remembers those who walked there before, and notices when someone new dares to enter its maze. 4.St. Mark's Church in the Bowery, Manhattan, New York, Haunted Church. It was a late autumn evening when I first walked towards St. Mark's Church in the Bowery. The streets of Manhattan were busy with cars and people, but as soon as I approached the church, the sounds of the city seemed to fade. The air felt heavier, colder, like it had been holding a secret for centuries. I couldn't explain why, but my steps slowed, and a strange nervous excitement ran through me. The church stood quietly, its old stone walls casting long shadows in the dim streetlight. I reached the heavy wooden door and hesitated before pushing it open. The creak of the hinges echoed in the empty hall, and a chill immediately brushed past my face. I stepped inside and felt the cold settle deep into my bones. The smell of old wood, wax, and candle smoke filled the air. It was comforting and terrifying at the same time. I started walking down the aisle, my footsteps the only sound breaking the silence. The pews looked as if no one had sat in them for decades, yet the room felt alive. I kept thinking about the stories I had heard, about the ghost of Peter Stuyvesant, the old Dutch governor, said to haunt the church with a limp. I laughed nervously at the thought, telling myself it was just legend. But the second I spoke, a soft creaking came from the balcony above. I froze, my heart thudding so loudly I could hear it in my ears. I scanned the shadows, but there was nothing. My stomach twisted as I walked slowly toward the altar. Each step seemed to stretch the silence, making it heavier. The air grew colder with every second, and I felt as though someone was standing just behind me, breathing quietly. I wanted to turn around, but my legs felt frozen. Then I saw it, a shadow flickering near one of the side doors. At first, I thought it was a trick of the light, but it moved deliberately, almost like someone walking with purpose. My chest tightened. I whispered, "Hello," and the shadow vanished instantly, leaving only the smell of old candles lingering in the air. I could feel a strange pressure on my shoulders, like invisible eyes were watching my every move. I decided to explore the basement. As I descended the narrow steps, a sudden cold breeze hit me, stronger than any draft should be. My heart skipped. I could hear faint footsteps echoing somewhere deep below, though I was certain I was alone. Then came a low sigh, barely audible, but unmistakably human. I froze completely. It wasn't wind. It wasn't imagination. I knew something else was down there. That I didn't stay long. As I climbed back up, my hands shaking, I realized the church wasn't just a building. It was alive with history, sorrow, and something else I couldn't name. Even as I stepped back onto the street, the city lights could not chase away the feeling that someone, or something, was still inside, watching, waiting, remembering every person who had ever walked through its doors. Even now, thinking about that evening sends chills down my spine. St. Mark's Church doesn't just look haunted, it feels haunted. Every creak, shadow, and sigh has a story, and I know I wasn't the only one who heard it. 5. Morris, Jumel Mansion, Washington Heights, New York, Haunted Mansion. It was a chilly evening when I first approached Morris, Jumel Mansion. The street was quiet, almost unnaturally so for Manhattan, and the mansion loomed ahead with its old white walls glowing faintly in the last light of the day. I felt a strange pull as I walked up the path. It wasn't fear exactly, more like anticipation mixed with unease. The air smelled faintly of earth and decaying leaves, and the trees around the property swayed softly, as if whispering secrets to each other. I stepped onto the wooden porch and hesitated for a moment. The door looked solid, but it creaked faintly, as if warning me not to enter. I brushed it off and pushed the door open. The inside was cooler than the evening air, and there was a faint scent of old wood, wax, and something metallic I couldn't place. My footsteps echoed on the polished floors, and for a moment, I wondered if anyone, or anything, was listening. I began walking slowly through the main hall, noticing portraits of stern-looking men and women lining the walls. Their eyes seemed to follow me, and I felt an involuntary shiver run down my spine. I tried to convince myself it was just the shadows playing tricks, but every corner I turned seemed to deepen the sense that I was not alone. The mansion had history, and it was alive with it, every creak. Every whisper of whine through the windows seemed like a memory trying to speak. I moved into the sitting room, where I noticed a faint cold spot near the fireplace. It felt like someone had just left, leaving the chill lingering behind. Then I heard it, a soft, deliberate footstep from upstairs. I froze, my heart pounding. I told myself there was no one there, yet the sound repeated, slowly descending the staircase. My stomach tightened. I wanted to run, but curiosity held me rooted in place. As I took a cautious step toward the staircase, a shadow flitted across the room, just at the edge of my vision. I spun around, but no one was there. The mansion felt heavier, like it had pressed down on me, warning me to leave. My hands shook slightly as I touched a nearby table, and the sudden sound of a chair scraping behind me made me jump violently. I didn't dare look. I finally gathered the courage to move toward the exit. Each step felt louder than the last, echoing through the empty halls. When I reached the porch and stepped outside, the warm evening air felt unreal after the oppressive cold inside. I looked back once, and for a fleeting second, I thought I saw a figure in the top window, watching me leave. Even now, thinking about that night makes my chest tighten. Morris, Jumel Mansion is not just a building. It holds the memories, sorrows, and perhaps the spirits of those who once lived here. And if you step inside, even for a moment, you realize it is very much alive, and very much aware of you.